All right, Gary, man, thanks for hopping on. To everyone who's watching this interview, this is my brother, friend, Gary Westley, also a fellow martial artist, and he was kind enough to offer his time and come on here and do this interview. Gary, the purpose of these interviews, I've done this interviews with several different people. I have a few more lined up. I'm doing interviews with people that that are doing inspirational things in the world, that are motivated to do good in the world, good in their communities, and have inspiration to share. So that's really the point of the interview, and we can just keep it flowing, keep it organic, kind of keep it relaxed, and just see what comes up, to share.
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you want me to introduce myself a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
So, first off, my name is Gary Westley. Clackamas Band Chinook, Kwa, Quino, Clicktat, Kalapuya. So usually, because I'm Native American, we usually introduce our tribe as we're introducing ourselves or clans or so and such. I'm a father, student, and also have worked numerous different jobs within the Native community doing social work and community work. And then I've also, coached for a lot of years, helping my brother here, Andrew, coach at ATT, and then or before that when it was Gracie Ball and stuff, so numerous tournaments, but also coached youth basketball for pretty much underserved youth or youth who are in foster care, whatnot, or who are, experience some form of, what would you call it here? Are displaced or whatnot. So that's kind of where I've been at. I've been involved in the community work for probably like 7 years now and such. And so it's really been a journey. And I thank you, Andrew, for allowing me to come on here and share a little bit about, my story and my journey that has been happening and is continuing to happen as I go forward. So.
What are the main things that you're focused on now? Like, what's the main work, projects, or motivations that you're focused on in your life right now?
Well, this past summer, we've been talking about it, but I've been, kind of made a career switch a little bit, so I needed to make a little money because I had some contracts, fall through because I would do summer camps and stuff to supplement income while I'm in school. And so right now I'm entering in my senior year of college, and it's been a, pretty much like a 10-year journey to complete my degree. And it's really an important thing to me as a personal goal because not a lot of my family. I think only my auntie has went to college, I believe, out of my immediate family, and so it's really a breaking barriers type of deal, and it feels good to break that barrier and be able to complete that. And it's been more challenging this year. Has been more challenging than anything because of how school has been changed, the format that has been changed, especially for my kids. But that's just one of the smaller goals that I have. One of the long-term goals of mine is to really find a way to bring martial arts to different communities, or one community in specific, which is the Cully neighborhood or community, I guess you'd call it. And that's kind of one of my lifetime goals, on top of competing and stuff like that. And that ties into my degree, which is in business management and leadership, which I hope to use to really manage the gym. What I want to do is open up a gym essentially, or academy, however you want to frame it. And so hopefully I'll be able to use that degree to be able to manage it in a very manage it so it's a successful business that also serves a purpose to the community, which is the ultimate goal. And so those are kind of like my life goals right there, and those are things I'm getting closer and closer to fulfilling those goals. And those are part of me fulfilling important things that I feel are really important to not only me, but that'll make my family really proud of me. So, and that's what I'm trying to do. So,
Something, as I've gotten to know you better, and we did some work together, over this summer, and as I got to know you better through that work, I see you as someone who embodies this like steady, unshakable strength towards your goals, towards being in service to your community. And that's something that's really inspired me, and something that I really respect about you. And so, I think one thing is I think we need more leaders that embody that integrity, that embody that motivation to really serve their communities in a real way. They're not about getting power just for power's sake. They're not about manipulating people. They're really about, like, straight up what they're saying, simply like serving the community, serving their families, serving the people in their lives, so that uplifts the community and uplifts other people. So I just wanted to give you that reflection, that that's something I really admire about you, is you have that steadfastness. Can you share a little bit about the people that have influenced your life and your ability to be a great leader in your community, and some things about them?
Yeah. I mean, there's numerous great leaders in the Native community. A lot. I can't really there's so many that were great influences in my life, and I guess probably the biggest would be Tana Sanchez. She's a state representative for, I can't remember what district, off the top of my head, but she essentially was an auntie in my life. She manages the domestic violence and foster care department at the Native American Youth and Family Center, which is where I worked at, actually. So when I started doing community work, I got into working at the Native American Youth and Family Center, and she was one of the directors there, and that was the department she directed. But I've known her since I was a little kid, and so she was probably one of the better leaders who really held up, who's very idealistic, who sort of created that standard of morality that I always wanted, or thought that was like, this is how things should be. We should have this type of integrity and stuff. And she always held me to a higher standard, which was great. She was one of the greater people in my life as far as being an influence. And we never really had too many really in-depth conversations, but it was more like just by her actions and how she was able to. She was pretty much like the matriarch in our community, more or less. And so she was kind of one of those great individuals that I was able to look up to. Another person was I can't think of his name now. All of a sudden his name just Tyler Barlow. And he is another one of our spiritual leaders in the community. And he would travel. He still, despite all these health issues, he travels to prisons around the state and does ceremonies with the men in the prison. And he's one of those guys who just has this way about him of no nonsense when it comes to certain things. So people tend to, when doing community work or social work, however you want to frame it, people tend to avoid accountability on their own. They always want to blame somewhere else, or talk about things that are unrelated to the real issue at hand. And he was always great about kind of cutting through that facade and getting directly to the main issue that's happening, or the real topic at hand and stuff. And those two people have really been great influences in my life. And then there's a few others here and there, but those two have been, they've created the standard of leadership that it's kind of hard to copy. And I try to search for that other places when maybe they aren't around and stuff like that. And I'd actually like to say, Andrew, you too. I think your leadership and being able to remain, I think your calmness is something that I aspire for. Your ability to remain even, in all these situations and stuff. And just from what I witnessed in our coaching and stuff like that. And I let my emotions get the best of me. And you're one of those people that I aspire to be, as far as being able to be in that even keel. So
Thanks, man. And that's really cool. What you shared is like those two individuals that really had a powerful impact on you. They had that powerful impact because they lived by example, and you observed that, or they do. They live by example. And I know that's what my mentors have just talked so much about, is how do you live by example? Depending on if we're in the work of working with people, of working with individuals, our life, the way we live our life, is our best business card. right? If we have services that are meant to provide great impact to others, well, we need to, are we living a life of integrity? Do we have that strength and that ability to remain equanimous through difficult times or even through amazing times, right? And so I love what you shared about the people that have had that impact on your life. And that also speaks a lot to where your heart is, the fact of where these people that really stood out to you and set the example for you, they're really serving people that need it the most. And so that kind of indicates where your heart is. What are the main populations of people you aim to serve with with the gym or the academy that you want to open up in North Portland, or even elsewhere?
So the reason why I chose the Kelly neighborhood is, one, it's where I lived at for a little bit. I grew up all throughout the um, Portland area, but I grew up mainly in North Portland and Northeast Portland, and I kind of moved around. People even you know, within Portland, people like to claim, "Oh, I grew up North Portland or Northeast Portland," right? So there's that kind of, I guess, rivalry or claim to territory, whatever you want to call it. And so I was involved in a lot of gang-related activity, though I wasn't, per se a gang member. And so I'm just telling the backstory because it's a point why I want to do why I want to bring it to the Cully neighborhood. It's because one of those neighborhoods where it's very diverse. And at the time when I was in high school, when I was living there, I had gotten into, me and my brother had gotten to sort of disputes with guys around the neighborhood, or a gang essentially, right? And so we pretty much had escalated. We were like fighting every other weekend with these guys, and then a relative of mine, ended up, shooting three of them, and I ended up, it was a very traumatic, time in my life, and we ended up having to move out of the city and all this other stuff, and so I really felt like I didn't, I wasn't, giving back to the community at the time. I mean, I wasn't helping the community, and so I want to, show up and give back in a good way to sort of make up for those mistakes, more or less. And also, it's a great community that's thriving, and there's a lot of a lot of there's a lot of like what would you call it, revitalization of the community, and not only from like a development perspective, but just feeling better about the community. There's less there's more like what would you call it, just a good feeling. That there's not that element of criminality there as much. It's more healthy families and communities kind of deal. So that's kind of the background between why I wanted to serve it. There's Native families who live there. There's immigrant families. It's the most diverse neighborhood or area in the entire metro area, as far as its demographics go, and so, or income, believe. I'm not sure. Anyways, so that's kind of why I wanted to bring it there. I always thought it was a great place too. That I just love the area, actually, more or less. So.
Nice, man. Nice. So yeah, can you share with us a little bit about your story, like where you grew up, how you grew up, some of the challenges you went through, and then some of the inspirations that have brought you to where you are now and the way you want to be, what you want to be doing now?
Yeah. So I grew up pretty much in North Portland, in a predominantly Black neighborhood. We were like one of the few Native families. And so, we're pretty poor, didn't have, much luxuries in life, more or less. So, and then home I grew up in, it was more, I would say, I grew up with a lot of gang influences. So actually, I think my basement growing up, I remember it was all tagged up. Um, so, it wasn't the most stable environment growing up in. And then also once we had to move, so yeah, so I experienced a lot of traumas there, growing up in that type of environment, and then we had to move a lot, spend a lot of time homeless, or we were living with people, but we were homeless. That's kind of actually where NEA came in. They helped at times get me home, or get my family a home and stuff like that. So helping with us doing that, but so we also spent time at one point living in the Portland area, I was really involved in like youth programming and stuff like that. But I would still, at times it was in areas that weren't the nicest. And Portland is, people are used to the Portland now, but growing up it was relatively safe. There were certain areas you just kind of avoided, but there was always at times where we couldn't go places just because there was a shooting or something like that. And that's kind of basically how it was growing up, when I was younger and stuff like that. Um, and then my mom moved us to the reservation for a couple of years. So I spent time on the reservation, which was a culture shock, as a native kid, going from inner city to country environment, stuff like that. Like one of the little things you don't think about is like, okay, I'm a city kid, I gotta have nice shoes. You can't have nice shoes in the country, kind of deal. And so that's one of those little things that you have. But then I got experience reservation life, which is equally as impoverished as the inner cities, if not worse. And then just other issues that are really impacting the community, native community, on a microcosm. So I it was different, but it was also a good experience because I learned a lot of stuff just around being in the country and stuff. And I also had grew up. Also during this time, my mom would take us to the reservation to visit at times, but it was a different reservation. I actually grew up, or a lot of times when I was younger, would go to a different reservation. I know I'm all over the place with this, but it's a
No,
complicated
I'm
story.
just loving hearing you share, hearing about your life. So
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So we would go to the Warm Springs reservation, which I grew up, where I learned a lot of my culture. Um, so then when we did move to the other reservation, the Grand Ronde, my actual tribal that I'm enrolled in, it was a little bit different because the culture was actually, it was a different they had a different culture there. And so I was like, what? This is not what I learned, but this is what I am. So kind of deal there. So and then I also learned a lot of my spirituality at one of our ceremonies up on Mount Hood that we have. So it's pretty much like going to different churches, to put it in perspective. Um, and so yeah, so I spent time, on the reservation, and we moved back to Portland. And during that whole time, pretty much for the first, or during that whole time, I was, more or less involved in like we, my, my mom was in a domestic violence situation constantly, domestic abuse. So it was kind of like a constant, like 7 years of while we are going through this with her, her at the time boyfriend and stuff. So it was a, 7 or 8 year period, through my, pretty much from like third grade to, I guess, 14. I think I was 14 years old when it stopped. And so, it was during all this time, I kind of had to go, fight with that, you know what I mean? Or just with that mental abuse happening, during, because he was more like, he wasn't physically abusive, but he was psychologically abusive to myself and my mom. And so during this time, there was a lot of other stuff happening, like my brothers were kicked out, or my older brother was incarcerated, or my other brother, selling drugs and stuff like that. So, there was no stability, no family dynamic really going on during this, full time period of when it was, when I was probably the most important development, stage in my life and stuff. So,
yeah,
uh, and that's kind of how I ended up, you know, as I am, and this is how I kind of have grown into the person I am. And um, uh, but yeah, so when I moved back to Portland when I was like 14 years old, I'll start it right there, and things kind of subsided. Um, I was going to school, and that's when we lived in the Cully neighborhood, and that's kind of when we had gotten involved in doing these more like gang related activities and stuff, and ended up my cousin up going to jail for shooting several people, and I take um, you know direct responsibility, me and my brothers, because we were part of it. We weren't saying, hey, no, kind of stuff. We could have started like, no, we just need to stop this. We just need to stop what we're doing at this point. And um, it was probably the most impactful time in my life was that 2 year period, because then I also had a really good relative of mine. He committed suicide. I think the day I was supposed to, when I moved back to the reservation again. So I moved to the city when I was 14, 16, 15, 16. We were going through all this stuff and had to move back. And that's when I was like homeless again. When I was 16, I think I was living with a relative in Lincoln City. And so because my mom, we had to move out of the house and we didn't have money to move anywhere. So I was living with a relative. And so, yeah. And so I ended up finally, completing school, and, graduating, which was, a big deal because I was the only brother of mine who only son of my mom's to complete, school and stuff like that. So that was, one, I guess, big barrier I had to overcome, despite all this stuff happening, this madness sort of
Yeah.
life and stuff. And thank you for letting me share all that. Whenever someone asks me, share that, I got to share this, complicated story and, with all these, side plots and stuff like that of what's happening in my life. And that was essentially everything. I could go way more, but I kind of leave it as that as far as my upbringing and going to and how I was raised.
Thanks for taking the time to share. Like I said, it's just an honor to connect with you and for you to take this time to share your story. And what are the things that you started to do for yourself, the things that helped you go through your own healing process and grow your own spirituality and sort of, I guess, grow through all of that?
So at the time, also we're training, we did a lot of, I didn't really realize at the time, but I'd go to ceremonies and stuff like that. And then I did Tai Chi and like Kung Fu. So that was also very healing during that time. I guess in a way would get me through that, those hard times in many ways, even though I wasn't realizing at that time.
Got it. So it's basically these practices that you chose to engage with that helped you get through that and helped you grow through the things you were going through.
Yeah. And they, later in life, I sort of lost, connection with that, lost the belief more or less. And all the things that happened sort of shaped, the reason why I wanted to get back to the community in a way. But it really was it was about me reconnecting with, not reconnecting, revitalize, like trying to, because my youth was so tumultuous, I needed to sort of rediscover it. I don't know. So when I got involved working with the youth organization, working with gang impacted youth, and it was really about me, I'm losing the word here, but refining my youth, more or less. And so I just kind of, that's basically what it was, why I went back to help that community and work with gang impacted kids. Because I felt like if I had, I didn't have a person there to be like, hey, stop what you're doing, more or less. And so like, whenever was that person. So I wanted to be that person.
Nice. If you were to, what would you say to the teenage version of yourself now, knowing what you know now, looking back, if you could give some wisdom or some guidance to that 15-year-old version of yourself, or to a 15-year-old young man going through really a similar situation as you, what would you say to him?
I say reach out, ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask for help. I think that's the one of the signs of trauma is not being able to ask for help. And that's really what a lot of acting out is, as with youth. It's their way of just asking for help. This is the only way they get attention, so that's how they're going to get attention. So they gotta framing it, talking about a better way of asking for help, essentially, is what I chalk it up as.
Where are those general places people could go to ask for help?
I mean, there's a ton of resources out there to help people, and there's all depending on what the person is going through, there's hotlines, or if you want like a case manager, you can talk to a lot of different people at different organizations, depending on, the person. If you're talking about, if you're Native American youth, there's, there's NARA, who has, every around, um, mental health wellness, or drug and alcohol addiction. There's Native American Youth and Family Center, that's more around academic, help, or yeah, yeah, academic help. And, and there's obviously, other outside sources that can help you. If it's like, if you go to counseling, therapy. For me, I reached out to, you for help. So, and I'm actually kind of glad you did. Or you, yeah, I remember one, specifically at the gym, you kind of came up to me. I can't even remember really the conversation, but I just remember we finally had to kind of get a sit down, because I knew, I'd just been going through things, and it was nice to sit down and talk with you and stuff like that. So I think for also kids is, being able to find those people maybe that can bridge that gap between, whatever those services are that they need, and which is kind of the tricky part, because a lot of times they don't trust those people who are in
Right.
positions in those organizations and stuff like that. So it takes people who are outside of and have that closer relationship. So,
Right. So the question becomes, if you have a hard time, if you're in a tough situation and you have a hard time trusting the people in your family, the people in your community, how does a person then bridge that gap? How do you know who to trust?
that's the tough part, and it usually takes um, sort of a major kind of event, a life changing event, or at some point, an internal, drive for change, I guess, or willingness to change. And you know, I think there's a lot of, in the Native community, we have these, uh, a lot of these events that happen where it's based around wellness. We they happen all over reservations and stuff like that, where they're able to, we discuss, very tough topics that, impact the community directly. And a lot of these are the bridge, to that, to bridging that gap, where maybe kids don't trust, or whoever doesn't trust people in their own personal lives, and they find that a person who comes in the community who's not necessarily, involved in these, mental health services and stuff like that, but are, about talking about these tough issues. They just get the thought in the head, in that person, that, maybe now is that time for change. And that's kind of the only, way I see it, as being able to implant that thought in that person's mind, that they need to make that change.
What were the little, like, if you tapped into sort of those feelings that you had of like why you trusted the people that you did to support you, what are those feelings? What's that sort of internal knowing that a young person could follow? Like, what should they be trusting within themselves first to be able to know, like, okay, I don't really want to go, this way, but I trust this organization. I trust these people. What are
Mhm.
those indications?
Indications of why they, or who they should trust. Well, from if I think about to my 16-year-old self, or high school self, I always looked up to the people who were doing these bad things, kind of deal. And I think at some point I found, my mind just, I knew this wasn't, me. It was about, identity, and my what I really liked, what I was doing, and how it made me feel. And so I always thought about that, okay, this person's not making me feel good, make me feel good about myself, or it's a more, I'm giving more to this person than they're giving to me, um,
Right.
and it's, they're not treating me very well. And so, I don't feel like I'm making myself growth. And so I think if they can come to that realization about who to trust, you know what I mean? If they think about the relationship with that person, and how much, what that person is giving back to you, I think that'll help them in making that growth, or taking that step towards wellness. I guess you could say, we'll chalk it up as wellness.
Nice. What do you feel like? Um, what do you feel like Native communities need the most right now?
Well, it's tough, um, because we experience so many different health disparities, um, in comparison with a lot of other demographics. And I don't like to go into that too much, Um, but right, if we want to talk about immediate, when you say that, there's so many like different communities that are impacted differently, especially by things such as disease with everything happening with COVID. Um, Certain communities were drastically impacted. I know the Warm Springs Reservation, there's like a water shortage happening on the reservation, and other reservations there's numerous things happening, or just lack of water access, um, economic depression, I guess you could say. Um, there's a number of issues that are happening, and I think when you talk about, you try to not be siloed when it comes to helping a community, because you kind of have to come with the perspective. You need to address this, 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 and this. How do you address high rates of suicide, but diabetes, and then also drug abuse, and then talk about all these other other things. So you kind of got to attack it all at once, more or less. But when you're talking about very specific stuff, like, okay, lack of water, okay, a lot of people organized and are taking water down to the reservation. And so those that's kind of the major media issues happening. We have our I can go into more detail about some of the major stuff happening on, like, a national level of maybe a change in government policy around certain stuff. There's some good stuff happening, and then there's some bad stuff happening. Issues like blood quantum, you know what I mean, or just the way lack of funding for healthcare. You can name it.
Did you say blood quantum?
Blood quantum, yeah, issues of blood quantum. So there's like, the government created this idea that within each reservation, to be tribally enrolled in a reservation, to have descendancy, you got to prove, or to prove descendancy, you got to have a blood quantum. So if you're when they created the reservations, okay, you're full, and now you got to be a certain blood quantum of that reservation to be able to be enrolled. And so there's talks of abolishing that for various reasons, and because it's just kind of discriminatory, because it's like there's plenty of people are native, and also it causes other issues within the community and stuff. So yeah, that's a sensitive topic, and can go in multiple ways. So
Got it. What are some of the good things that are happening for your community or other communities that you're excited about?
there's been a revitalization of wellness. There's been a lot of growth in our communities around revitalizing our cultures, our languages. A lot more people who are looking to be well. They've made that. It's kind of a generational thing. It's like a generation right. Before me is really about healing, really about creating a healthy community that's alcohol and drug free kind of deal. So it's pretty cool to watch. Most of it's on social media. They are about changing the community and stuff like that, and helping each other, uplift each other, and be supportive of the ones who are struggling to make that transition into being a healthy individual for a healthy community. Right, so that's where it starts, right? Healthy individual, and then healthy community. So that's kind of the cool stuff that's happening. That's kind of like even like if you talk about even in Portland, like NEA was partnered with the Celeste tribe, and they opened some tribal housing, more or less, that's close to NEA. So housing was a big issue with in the tribal community, and so there's a couple different um, um, properties that are for Native Americans that are in Portland. One's in actually the Lentz neighborhood. I think, yeah, Lentz neighborhood, close to the gym, and then the other one is on 42nd in the Cully neighborhood. So that's pretty cool stuff right there. That I can take pride in, and like, we did that. We're making a lot of progress on other aspects. Now it's kind of like the hardest part is the individuals. That's where that change is happening, but it's a slow and long process. So.
It faded out a little bit there. What'd you say the hardest part is what?
Oh, the hardest part is the individual, addressing the individual in the community. That's the long-term process, because we put all these resources, into people who do this community work, who work in these various aspects of the community, addressing these various issues, making those change within those individuals that they work with. That's the long game. You know what I mean? And I think when it comes down to, if you're talking about how a lot of people, are very, they attack the native community because, we get some resources more than others. Well, it's kind of, we have a lot to battle, and it's a long-term battle. It's not a short-term. You can't put a timetable on healing, and that's what,
Yeah.
took that into consideration for my own personal healing. I don't want to put a timetable on it, but I just want to know. I want to make this progress at some point.
What are some of the main things that non-natives can do to really respect and honor and develop better relationships with native communities as far as a whole, as a nation?
Um, that's that's a good question there. What I would like to see personally, and I would just like to see. I think we garner a lot of respect. I think, but then it's also kind of, we get this like, sort of like a, it's like a kind of, I don't know how to say it. People respect us, but at the same time, it's kind of backhanded respect, where they we were just kind of like the sideshow, kind of deal. It's not like a ton of, um, it's a misguided respect, I would say. And I obviously we would need, if you want to talk about, something a little more tangible, more assistance for healthcare. That's probably the biggest issue. And more like help with changing the policy, at a national level for those policies that are, really affecting our reservations, like the blood quantum. But that's also like, that's kind of intertribal strife too, because in certain tribes, like it, and other tribes don't. And I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, it's a broad topic about how people can help us. If we want to talk about individual level, the individual, um, I would say that, just, give respect, and help a native out every once in a while. It doesn't always necessarily need to be monetary. You know what I mean? And I think that's what people need to realize, that money doesn't just make issues go away. It's a yeah. It's basically it. I mean, that's best I can summarize that. So how you can non-natives can help us, and it's tough because it's like we want help, but then it's we also want to have that we did it ourselves. I mean, we want to beat that. We created this. You may have helped us a little bit, but let's not take away from what we have done as a community ourselves. So I think they call it like the white savior kind of mentality.
Yeah.
I'm gonna save you. You're gonna, it's like Dances with Wolves kind of thing. The guy comes in, he knows where all the buffalo are at. Kind of you're telling me that people who lived there hundreds of years didn't know where the buffalo were at. So
Right.
we know where the buffalo are at. You know what I mean? We maybe just need help with the other stuff around it. So
Yeah. Right. And my understanding is, like with anyone we want to come support, don't come support thinking you're the savior to help them. Come as, brothers and sisters, that we need to uplift one another. And we need to learn about what it really means to respect one another. Like I could come to you thinking I'm doing some actions that really respect you, when in your mind there's actually something different that I would do that actually respects you.
yeah, or that I actually need help with.
They actually, so I could say, sitting down, being present with you, saying, hey brother, how can I show you the most respect from the place that you're in? How can I, offer support? How can we grow together?
I mean, that's kind of it. It's
Yeah. What are some of the things right now that bring you the most joy in life?
Well, my kids, I love spending time with them when I can. You know what I mean? And I say that, but secretly I despise them. No, I was kidding. It's a lot of work as a father, but I love spending time with my kids. I love my training, um, and that's kind of what brings me joy. And like when I'm able to spend time in my native community too, and I really enjoy certain ceremonies and stuff like that. I'm kind of a private person. I don't really like going to too many like big community gatherings and stuff like that. Well, now we can't really do that anyways, but I enjoy spending time with my brothers, and when I can, go hunting and stuff like that, and go hiking with my family and spend time on the river. And it's really that's when I really feel good about myself and about the direction that I'm going and stuff like that. When I'm able to have these good conversations. So,
What do you hunt when you go hunting? What do you usually hunt?
um, I mean, I've hunted elk before, deer, um, and that's basically a mule deer, And I'm not a really avid hunter, you know what I mean? But it's been a few years since I actually got something, but that's something I want to revitalize as my own personal goal. Another one, you know what I mean? So it is, going out there and hunting a little bit more. It's an important part of who I was when I was younger. I used to go hunting a lot.
Nice.
Um, so, yeah.
Nice. What has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu done for your life?
Oh, it's been awesome. It's been this journey of failure, failing over and over again, but being able to sort of overcome my own personal uh, my own personal, like, because you have to have these, we talked about a lot, sort of, why do I, you know my own personal, like, thoughts on why I'm doing things the way I am, based on everything that's happened in my life. And so, martial arts was such of this, personal growth, like being able to track my personal growth, along with, my growth as a martial artist, doing the sport itself. Um, and being able to concentrate on it, like, well, I got to make this change. I'm not doing well at this. How am I going to make this change? And there's definitely a parallel between that and my own personal life. I mean, okay, I got to make this change. Just got to make this change for martial arts. And they ran along with each other. um, and it's been just a great journey being able to grow as a martial artist and you know learn a new martial art. And for me, it's just been, the thing I needed in my life, that was missing for a lot of years after my Sifu passed away, which is like about 5 years ago. So I wasn't able to do any martial arts, and I kind of discovered Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and it's been great for me.
You've had a few MMA fights, yeah?
I've had one. I've
Oh,
had
one. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I knew you had the recent one. I didn't know if you had some before that.
No, I'd been on the cusp of fighting and then never did. So yeah,
But 1-0 MMA fighter.
want to know. I boxed. Only had one boxing bout, but I'd done some jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff, which is,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. I remember seeing the picture posted online where you won the fight, but you're just exhausted. I think it was like Ian or someone there, just like you're hanging on his shoulders. That was an awesome image because I remember being around you as you're working up towards that. You were losing weight, training for the fight, all that. Came out with a win.
Yeah.
Was it just exhausting, or you just had to give it everything?
I you know, I what pretty much what they summed up as is I held my breath for a whole round, more or less. So what happened was I'd gotten clipped. I got a flash knockdown. He knocked me down. I got up. He took my back and had me in the rear naked, but I had to fight that and pretty much had to hold my breath for like a minute and a half. And
Uh,
I got up and had to fight him, and it was an adrenaline dump, and it was like, so by then I was just exhausted because they knew I was in shape. We did the they called them Shark Tank me. They
yeah.
Shark Tanked me like a couple weeks before, and so I did some Shark Tank rounds, and they actually said I did well in that, and was like, even in the later rounds, I was actually getting up on I was doing better than the dudes who were coming in fresh. So, um, I held my breath. I was so tired, exhausted. I just remember holding on to Ian. I couldn't even walk down the stairs. I was just trying to like focus on step in front of step, and ended up in the hospital after that. And that was really um, an important thing for me to do was to fight. And I had a lot of reasons why to fight. It's been a journey. It was like always talking about, oh, I want to fight. I want to do this. I want to fight. And I finally did it. And I did it in the way I wanted to do it. And I had to dedicate it to a friend of mine who had passed away. I think it was 6 months before that. 6 months before,
Wow.
or 9 months. Yeah, it was pretty sudden. He's a good guy. He was out on a beach and ended up, something happened, and he was, he was shot and killed. But he was a good friend of mine, really, really good friend of mine, a good person. And, I knew his daughter. She was involved in the community, and his dad was an actual spiritual leader in the community. So it was a pretty big shock. He was just a great person. And it was pretty sad, just kind of bad situation he put himself in. And so that fight was definitely, less about myself and more about him and me dedicating that to him. I didn't really talk about it too much, but I sort of kept on the inside and made it, a personal thing that I wanted to do. So
that's powerful. Yeah.
Thank you.
We just have a few more minutes here. And, one of the main things I'm also connecting with people about in these interviews is almost everyone I do these interviews with has some connection to the accelerated evolution work that I do.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the underlying methodology that I utilize in the sessions that we did together. And I'd love if you could just share just a minute or two of just what were some of the main benefits you got out of that work that we did and those methods that we utilized.
Being self-aware, just realizing the importance that spirituality had played in my life. Being able to, take that introspective look at things and being able to see myself in this light, in this dark, the duality of myself, and it was, being able to accept these things about myself, and so I'm getting so emotional about it right now, but, because it was such an impactful thing in my life to be able to go through that process, and so I just really want to thank you for that. But yeah, so that's kind of how it's impacted me, and help me sort of center myself, rediscover an old self, a positive, that, I sort of had a positive aspect of who I am as a person, which is my spirituality that I've sort of forgot about, you know what I mean? And why that was so important to me, and just give me that perspective that I needed to rediscover it, on a personal level, for me, not for anybody else, but for myself. So, that's how it's been so impactful on me, man. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, well, it was a huge honor to get to do that with you. And if you had one word to describe what you came away with, what would that be?
Ooh, enlightenment. Enlightenment.
Beautiful. Right on, man.
Thank you.
Well, dude, I just want to thank you so much for your time to hop on here, share your story, share your wisdom, share, just these important insights, and talk about these important, I know it can be challenging topics to go into, but I just really appreciate and honor your time and your willingness to come on here and jam with me. The goal and the intention is that somebody out there might watch this, that it feels really supportive to them. It feels impactful to them. So that's really the goal of these interviews. And maybe, we talked about, people wondering, well, who do I reach out to? And maybe we put this video, someone goes on YouTube, they watch this video and they see someone they can reach out to, or it sparks their mind of, oh yeah, I can reach out to this organization nearby, or
right,
etc. So just in various ways, my prayer for these interviews is just they touch someone somewhere in a good way and inspire them to reach out or to evolve and grow in the way that they really want to. So thank you for the work that you do in the world. It's such important work. And
yeah, thank you again for having me, my man. I really appreciate it, and hopefully it does someone is able to, make some life altering change from watching these videos.
Yeah. So thank you for your strength. Thank you for your time. And I'll look forward to connecting with you more soon.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
All right, bro. Take care, man.
You too. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching this interview. I hope you feel uplifted and inspired by what was shared. Make sure you like and subscribe to make sure that you see all the other awesome videos that we have coming up.